Hey guys, welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel where we cover all things crypto from the perspective of a miner. So today's video is going to give a quick update on a lot of the news that dropped last week regarding these big BTC mining farms. I'm going to go over the mining adjustment we had 2 weeks ago and one we're going to have today if it hasn't happened already. And going to go over the Intel Bitcoin ASIC miners. Going to go over the specs for those of you who are unfamiliar with that. So if that sounds interesting, guys, stay tuned and let's get right to it. So all of these are going to be CoinDesk articles. I'm pretty much just going to go over the headlines, as you're going to see the common theme here in a second, and then we'll go over what it kind of means overall. So this is all news that dropped last week. We'll start with this article. Bitcoin miner Greenidge reaches debt restructuring deal with NYDIG as bankruptcy looms. Under the deal for restructuring $74.7 million worth of debt, Greenidge will host NYDIG's new machines. So essentially what's happening there is they're going from being self-mining only to hosting, right? So it's good development for them. They're trying to pivot. They're trying to keep up with the times. They're trying to stay relevant. They're trying to stay afloat, right? So let's go to the next one. Bitcoin miner CleanSpark cuts 2023 hash rate outlook by nearly 30%. So the miner cited delays in building out a mining facility by one of its partners, Lancium. So this was something that was kind of out of their control, which, I mean, things happen. This isn't the first time they've had delays, or other big miners have had delays. Things happen, especially when you're, putting up the infrastructure, setting up the buildings, building codes, building permits. All that stuff is going to affect everything. So they are reducing their outlook by 30%. And realistically, I'm sure they're in no rush considering the market. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's go to the next one. So Bitcoin mining firm TeraWulf raises $10 million in new capital to repay some of its debts. The Maryland-based mining company also said it has restructured a previous agreement with Bitmain to add 8,200 new machines to its fleet. So the interesting one here is the simple fact that they were actually able to raise money. For these guys right now, for any of these mining farms, I'm sure it's extremely, extremely difficult because nobody wants to touch any of these things, especially considering just the market in general. Look at any of these guys' stock prices. It's insane how much they have dropped, but they were able to get some. The other interesting thing is that they were able to restructure a previous agreement. So I'm sure, because a lot of these guys, again, placed orders last year, right? Or the beginning of this year when prices were extremely high. So I'm sure they were able to reduce some of that to keep up with the newer price trends. So it's good news for them. Let's go to the next one. So Bitcoin miner Argo Blockchain says it's close to restructuring without having to declare bankruptcy. So the London-based company warned, however, there's no guarantee it will be able to do so. So they're going to live another day. We'll see how long they do. They didn't sound too optimistic. Like, this is pretty worrisome. But yeah, that's the update with Argo. And this is the big dog. We covered this one when they announced it first, which is Core Scientific. So Bitcoin miner Core Scientific's lender wants to give miners $72 million to avoid bankruptcy. So investment bank B. Riley said most of the struggling miners' issues are self-imposed and can be corrected. So this one is a big deal, right? If Core Scientific goes down, it will trickle down to all the other guys. It will kind of set a precedent because they are the biggest. So you can kind of see the theme between all of these, if they're all restructuring their debt. And I think that's part of the reason we saw these last few months is that they were all saying, oh, we might declare bankruptcy. They were trying to put pressure on the lenders for them to be able to restructure with them, right? And in reality, it's going to benefit both parties, right? At the end of the day, these lenders don't want to see them go bankrupt because then there goes their whole investment. Okay, so this is going to work both ways. I'm sure we're going to see more of this. But in reality, how long are they going to be able to stay afloat still, right? If we go by the 4-year cycle, we still have a whole nother year of sideways action. Okay, so I mean, this is going to give them time to really restructure what they're doing. So what the hope is in all of this is that they all start to downsize, right? The problem here, especially with the Core Scientific, is they just got so huge. They control so much of the hash rate, right? So a lot of them are going to downsize. I'm sure a lot of these guys, because this is specific to all these guys who had so much debt, These guys went in super aggressive at the beginning of the year, thinking, oh, this time it's different. There's going to be no bear market. Look where we're at. So the ones who did prepare, though, the ones that don't have any debt or not as much debt, they're the ones that are going to be in good position to scoop up these miners, right? Because a lot of these guys are going to downsize. They are going to sell. And I'm sure they're going to be super cheap. I'm sure that's part of the reason we've been seeing these flood of S19Js all over the place. I've seen some like 95, 96 terahash models in like the sub $1,000 range, which is insane. These things just a year ago were like 10K plus, right? So I'm sure a lot of these guys are going to be buying these miners and they're just going to stockpile them. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if they're not profitable currently, but they will be eventually, right? And I'm sure that is their mindset. All right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about the mining difficulty. So the one that caught everybody's eye was the one that happened 2 weeks ago, and it was a 7% drop. So Bitcoin mining difficulty drops by most since July 2021 as crypto winter cuts profitability. So that was that I think it was 7.3%. Yep, it was a 7.3% drop, and it was nice, right? For all you Bitcoin miners, nice little jump in profits. My question, the reason I didn't even really cover it much is not only why, but for how long is this going to last, right? It can be something as simple as, one of these big mining farms, or not just one, but maybe quite a few, we're going to have doing some kind of maintenance, or was it because they were unplugging? Is it because they're selling? Are they unplugging and keeping the units? Or are they unplugging and selling them? Is just another farm going to pick them all up and they're going to be plugged in by the next difficulty adjustment? So we did get a partial answer. So if it hasn't happened already, it's going to happen within the next few hours. But it looks like it's going to go up 3%, which, yes, it's going up. But overall, right, we just had that 7% decrease. Yes, it's going up a little bit. But this is a good sign. And hopefully this trend continues where we either stay where we're at or continue to go down, right? We need the hash rate. We need the difficulty to go down for these guys to stay profitable, especially for any guys with S19Js. The XPs are still profitable, but barely, right? So we're going to see, what happens if this trend continues, or if people start plugging them right back in and we go to freaking all-time highs with the hash rate. We'll see. I mean, a lot of it's going to be dependent on the price action, right? If we stay where we're at, then I think we're going to go sideways. Hopefully it doesn't increase too much from here. But if we do get some price appreciation, then expect it to go up. Especially, I think one of the articles mentioned a lot of like break even for a lot of these guys was that like 18.5 range for the BTC price. So if we see, let's say in the spring, we get a higher low instead of, ranging in this, well, we've been at like this 15.5 to 17 for quite a while, but let's say in the springtime, we hover from like, let's say 19 to 22, then a lot of these guys will be able to stay afloat. But again, if we, stay in this current price range, a lot of these guys, yes, they were able to restructure, they were able to get a few more, loans, but I highly doubt it's going to last them the whole year, right? So only time will tell there. So let's jump gears again. Let's talk about these Intel rigs, right? So these actually got announced quite a while ago. I think a lot of people either forgot about them or, well, they didn't necessarily forget about them. The reason I'm even bringing it up is that I've been noticing a lot of people talking about it in videos or going to discussions about it. The reason they're hesitant on buying like an XP or something is because they think the Intel rig might be a monster. Well, guys, in case you're not familiar, the specs have been leaked quite a while ago and they weren't impressive. So we'll go over it real quick. So this was an article from CoinDesk. So crypto miner Hive cuts computing power forecast for Intel chip-based rigs. The Canadian firm said 5,800 machines will provide computing power of upward of 630 petahashes per second by the end of January. That's less than the October forecast of 1 exahash. So a lot of these mining farms, because essentially what happened is that it's only mining farms that had access to these rigs. So they're not necessarily full rigs that they assembled. What it seems like it's that they, created the hashboard and the controller, and it's up to these mining farms to create their own enclosure, essentially. So the only one that's actually really talked about is Hive. So they actually have talked about it. They haven't showed pictures or anything specifically, but they did name them. They're called the Buzz Miners. So that's kind of the only thing we've had. There hasn't been any retail sales of them, right? No company has came out with them. I'm sure it seems like it may be in the pipeline, right? Because they're still shipping these out to these big mining farms. So it's something that may happen in the future. Sometime next year, maybe. It just depends on your manufacturer to actually assemble them, design a box and be able to ship them out. Whether or not it happens, though, different story. Let's go over the specs. They haven't officially came out and said what these specs are, but this has been essentially what it is. So this leaked from a big miner Grid. This came out quite a while back. So they didn't specifically say Intel, but we all know this is Intel's. So the specs were coming in at 135 terahash, and the power they had it listed at 26 watts per terahash. So if we break it down, it was essentially going to be, again, 135 terahash, 3,500 watts, which when we compare it to the XP, automatically already not as good, right? So depending on what the price is, especially if this thing does make it to retail, I'm not sure what these guys were paying for it. The only mention is like here, when they were kind of hyping it up, is that it was essentially half of what, the Bitmain equivalent was. So let's say Bitmain's, I think they have it listed at it was 10,455. So the speculation was that these guys paid 5,600 for these, which was a pretty good price. But again, it's not as efficient as the Bitmain, as the XPs, because the XP, I think the 134 terahash variant, it comes in at like 2,900 watts. So Bitmain still has them there, right? So these things aren't really anything groundbreaking. They're still coming out. They still haven't officially released. So if this is something that was like holding you up or preventing you from possibly buying an ASIC, I wouldn't even factor that in, right? Unless this thing comes in crazy low. This thing comes in at like under $2,000, which I highly, highly doubt. As a matter of fact, I don't even really think this thing is ever going to make it to retail. I don't even, especially considering how the GPU sales went, I sincerely doubt it. But the big benefit, though, is that this would be produced in the U.S., so that gets rid of a lot of those tariffs, a lot of the shipping issues, and overall, it's good. It would be good for the market to have another big ASIC manufacturer instead of it just being essentially Bitmain. Yes, there's Gold Shell, yes, there's IB Link, but in reality, it's Bitmain, especially for BTC miners, right? So we'll see. Maybe they have a third gen in the pipeline, but based off of what has come up here, I don't really see that happening. But again, maybe by the next bull market, we'll see. It's only time will tell there. All right, guys, so just wanted to give you that update and give you that information on the Intel miner. So if you found value in the video, guys, please comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, guys, and I am out.